Let's create a new obstacle that kicks the player back to the start of the level immediately, a really punishing one that adds an extra element to our gameplay. Remember, this is an optional tutorial, but for those of you who are interested in seeing a little bit of code and maybe writing a bit yourself, it's a cool opportunity to kind of peek under the hood a little bit. I'm going to need to make sure that two things are set up properly in advance of making this work. First, I'm going to check that my player under the inspector has a tag called player. There's a bunch of different options here, but I want to make sure that it's tagged as player. Second, I need to make sure, just double check that I have a spawn point set and added into my hierarchy. If both of those things are there, I can head into my assets, under scripts, and right click to create a new C# script. Just a reminder, if at any point I'm going too fast in the tutorial, you can just press pause or slow it down to catch up. Now that the script is made, I need to give it a new name. I'm going to call this player teleporter because it's going to be responsible for teleporting the player back to the spawn point. When this is created, I'm going to double click on it to open up Visual Studio, my editing software. Mine's going to open up nice and quickly, but yours might actually ask you to sign in and sign up for the first time. Just click sign in and you should see your Surrey School's name pop up in the middle of your screen. Choose it and it will let you get through to actually see the same screen that I do. Your Surrey School sign in will work just fine. Welcome to your first C# script. Inside of it, I have information at the top that needs to be here. I have this definition of my actual script name, player teleporter. I need to keep that as well, but everything inside of these squiggly brackets I can actually delete for now. Maybe hit enter to add some space, because we're going to be writing everything in custom to make this one work. Don't worry, there's not too many lines of code to write. The first thing that I'm going to add is something called a public game object called SpawnPoint. Please spell everything exactly the same way that I do. Public means that things outside of the script can see and interact with this. Game object refers to just a generic game object from Unity, meaning I can attach anything that I want to this. And spawn point is the name that I gave it, specifically referring to the fact that I want there to be a spawn point attached to this, because I need to get some information from the spawn point in my game. With that written, we're now going to enable a piece of behavior or functionality that is included from Unity called private void on collision enter. And inside of these brackets after it, I'm going to write in the word collision and give it the name collision. When you study coding with me more in the future, if you choose to do so, I'll explain all these different steps in more detail, but really simply, I only need to worry about this in my script, and it's simply just doing and checking for collisions, and the thing that I collide with, I want to be able to access and kind of interact with. Okay. Inside of these squiggly brackets that I create afterwards, I'm going to type an if with some brackets. Here's the condition that I'm looking for. And I'm going to say, if my collisions game objects tag is player. And make sure you spell everything exactly the same way I do, including capitalization. Then I'm going to create another set of squiggly brackets for the result. If I touch the player, what do I want to have happen? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my actual players, the thing that I collide with, its game objects, transform, and its position. A few different things combined in here. Basically, I'm accessing the thing that I collide with. I want to access the object, and then I want to change the position to be the same thing as my spawn points, transform, and position. And just to be really confident here, I'm going to gather all the same information. I want the information from my spawn point to become the same as my player, basically teleporting my player to the spawn point. This should be all the code that I need. So I'm going to press Ctrl S and head back over into Unity. And I now have the script that I can see the code right here that should all be pretty well set up. Now to create an object that we can collide with. I'm going to create a basic cube and just place it near the start of my level just for testing purposes. Oh, let me grab it and pull it up here properly. Let's move it over. And I want this object to have two things attached. A box collider, which actually came with mine automatically, and a rigid body. This rigid body, I'm going to disable gravity and enable something called iskinematic, meaning it's going to stay stuck in place. It's not allowed to move anywhere. And then finally, I'm going to take my player teleporter and drag it over onto this game object so that the script is attached to this block. The final thing I need to do is find the spawn point and attach it so that I know which spawn point I'm referring to. Technically, I could make a bunch of different spawn points and then have this teleport the player to a specific one that I create. I only have one for now, so I'm going to use it. I'll drag it over here, and voila. If I hit run in my game, now I have this block that if I manage to bump up against it, teleports me back to the start of the level. And now what I can do if I want to is move it wherever I want in the scene. I can stretch it out and make it a little bit bigger. And now I have this bit of a wall that kind of makes it so I can't maybe go down that path without a consequence. If I wanted to, I could rename this to teleport wall, head into my assets, prefabs, and click and drag this down to create a master copy of it that then I can use to create as many different teleport walls as I wanted to, and create a bit of a difficult, I can't touch anything type of maze. Oop. And one thing I notice here is that these ones aren't quite working. What is the problem with these? Well, the teleport walls, the second and third one here, neither of them have the spawn point attached. So I can actually select both of them at the same time, drag the spawn point over, and now both of them have a spawn point assigned to it. And so when I run this, now I see that all of these teleport me back to the start. And as one final example, what if I took the spawn point, copied and pasted it, so I have a second spawn point, and move this one over to the side, like I told you, I referenced a few seconds ago here. Well, what if I made this wall have this second spawn point, oh, let me scroll down, instead? Well, now the first two walls on the right teleport me back to the very beginning spawn point, but this one on the left teleports me to that spawn point. So I suddenly can make a whole bunch of different teleport places wherever I want and create different combinations of linking between these teleport objects and the spawn points they send my player to. Pretty cool. I'm really curious to see how you use this to create some gameplay. You could even consider doing something like, if you wanted to be kind of really creative and clever, what if I created another platform way up here that isn't reachable by a jump, but I took this spawn point and I moved it up to the corner over here. And I took this object and I moved it back and I shrunk it down and maybe made it just a little bit thing on the corner here that technically isn't a consequence or a punishment now, but it's actually a teleport pad to get up higher, to get around some obstacles or find a new space on the map. A whole new game mechanic is now enabled for us to play around with that maybe you can think of other ways you could use this to advantage in your game. But there you go, another option for you to integrate into your design.